The Nissan X-Trail is the world's best-selling SUV, according to Nissan. A remarkable 750,000 examples of the X-Trail, badged rogue in some overseas markets, found owners in 2016. This family crossover also finds itself right in the UK new car market's sweet spot. According to the number crunchers at JATO Dynamics, in the first half of 2017 the UK SUV segment accounted for 31.1% of new car sales. That's a meaty 435,971 sales and way ahead of the super mini sector, 20.2% and 282,500 sales, or the hatchback sector, 20% and 280,995 sales. Now is clearly a good time for the third-generation X-Trail, initially launched in 2014, to be refreshed. This isn't a massive makeover, with much of the effort going into updating the exterior, making the interior feel more upmarket and adding more electronic gadgetry. On the outside, the nose has been remodeled, it's more aggressive, distinctive and chromed, and the rear bumper has been reworked for a similar result. Higher-spec models get a visual lift from a big chrome strip along the bottoms of the doors. Inside, Nissan makes much of the new premium steering wheel, which is bigger and fatter and has more fingertip controls. The center console has also been restyled for more storage space, and there are various other upgrades in materials and finishes. Top-end versions now have seat heating for the front and second-row seats and a hands-free electric tailgate. A child-size third row of seats is still available, and the boot size in the two-row versions has edged up in capacity to 565 liters. Nissan is heavily pushing driver assistance technology, so the X-Trail gets quite a raft of options. These included a new rear cross-traffic alert that gives warnings when reversing out of a parking space. Also new is stand-still assist, which can hold a manual X-Trail stationary for 3 minutes before applying the handbrake. In early 2018, Nissan will add the option of Pro Pilot, which can control the X-Trail's steering, acceleration and braking, within a single lane, on a motorway in heavy congestion and at a high-speed cruise. The engine choice remains the same, a 128 bhp 1.6-liter diesel, a 174 bhp 2.0-liter diesel and a 161 bhp 1.6-liter turbo petrol, mixed with manual or CVT gearboxes and front-wheel or four-wheel drive. At the launch in Austria, our test car was a range-topping Tekna, equipped with the 2.0-liter diesel engine, 6-speed manual gearbox and four-wheel drive. The CVT is now also available in conjunction with all-wheel drive, for those who would prefer it. Although this car has a beefy list price of around £34,000, it looks like value next to the established premium brand competition. The entry-level, £23,000 1.6-liter diesel model is even more so, but Nissan says 47% of sales will be of the range-topping version. There's no doubt the X-Trail hits something of a sweet spot. The car is imposing and looks like it could handle a dusty trail, but not at the cost of being unwieldy in urban areas. The refreshed interior is also pleasingly smart and plush-looking. The new flat-bottom steering wheel really does make a difference to the driver's sense of quality, and while the interior is not an exercise in cutting-edge aesthetics, it has a fine sense of style and practicality. And we shouldn't overlook the traditional Japanese ability to engineer tightly constructed interiors. On the road, the X-Trail is nothing more and nothing less than a very amiable companion. It's comfortable, has an excellent driving position and is an entirely undemanding car in typical driving conditions. The X-Trail asks very little of the driver, and there are few drivers who will be minded to ask very much of the X-Trail. This car is a good way of making the monotony of rush hours and busy motorways as bearable as possible. It runs straight and is easy to wind along a country lane. With that in mind, it's a shame that Nissan has not done more to address refinement. As we has noted with the outgoing model, this diesel engine is not as hushed as it might be. Under hard acceleration and when cruising at higher speeds, it needs to be better isolated. We drove this car back-to-back in Austria with the latest iteration of the Cash Car, which has been given a significant, and successful, upgrade in terms of overall refinement. The X-Trail is too noisy at motorway speeds, suffering engine intrusion and more wind flutter around the A-pillars than it should have. Should I buy one? The X-Trail is a million miles from being a hot rod and will hold little interest for anyone who wants to be engaged with their mode of transport. But it looks good, can handle light off-roading, it was pretty effortless on mountainous fire trails in Austria, has a nice interior, a very usable cabin and boot and is comfortable and pleasurably undemanding. You can see why it has become the world's biggest selling crossover, offering an impressive amount at a discount to premium brand rivals. But it's frustrating that Nissan has failed to offer the same upgrades in refinement, especially for this diesel version, that did so much for the new Cash Car Subarus, and I have an interesting relationship. I was the proud owner of a MYOO Impreza WRX, back when I didn't care about the cost of insurance and what other people thought I did for a living. Later cars lost their mojo and the brand reached its nadir during the GFC with offerings that just didn't cut it, in my head at least. The last few years have seen the brand climb out of the funk, with the first and second generation XVs and the new Impreza. The Forester straddles the new Subaru and those that went before, but has been an absolute mainstay for the Japanese brand here in Australia. I drove the Forester TS last year and wasn't entirely convinced, so it was with mild trepidation I was assigned the Forester 2.5 IS. I needn't have been. My biggest criticism of the turbocharged TS, and XT before it, was that the CVT auto wasn't suited to the engine, flaring and lassoing about while making a racket. In this lower-powered, more relaxed 2.5-liter Boxer 4, it's much more at home, with just 235 Nm to manage along with a modest 126 kilowatts. Between the engine and transmission it's quieter and far more agreeable, if not particularly snappy, with a 9.9-second, claimed, run from 0 to 100 km per hour. The 2.5 IS is the second step up in the range, which starts with the 2.0 at $30,240 for the manual and rising to $39,740 for the CVT-only S, via a couple of diesels and the 2.5 IL. The S adds a few niceties we'll cover over the next 6 months to Christmas, but we are absolutely in love with the fast-acting heated seats that will be further tested on an upcoming trip to Thredbo. We've settled into the Forester quickly, 3, and counting, airport runs with luggage, 2 for me, 1 for the in-laws, a mission to buy a few months' worth of chick feed for our 5 hens and lots of school runs along with a couple of motorway trips. There's plenty more where that lot came from.
A winning recipe for adventure, with tasty new ingredients. When it debuted in 2013 as the XV Crosstrek, it was questionable whether an all-new Subaru that was essentially a lifted and ruggedized Impreza hatchback would strike a chord with buyers. The answer didn't take long. Just 3 years later, it was Subaru's third best-selling model behind the Outback and Forester. Leave it to Subaru to not only make a hatchback desirable to SUV-crazed consumers, but to do it so successfully that rivals seem sprouted. Of course, part of the appeal of the Crosstrek, it dropped the XV in its name a couple of years ago, is that it can be considered a crossover in the truest sense, an automotive melding of hatchback utility, SUV-like ground clearance and all-wheel drive, and sedan-like road manners. Now comes the 2018 Crosstrek, an all-new version that ushers in the model's second generation. Much of the formula remains the same, and given the initial model's success, it's difficult to argue with that logic. The rugged 5-door hatchback design is fresher yet familiar, with a slight growth in size that translates to more interior room. Look closer, though, and you'll see this has truly been revamped. Following the Impreza, the Crosstrek is the second model to use the Subaru global platform that has been engineered for better driving manners, more comfort, and an even higher degree of safety. A bevy of new technology has also been loaded into the new Crosstrek, including Apple CarPlay and Android Auto compatibility as standard. And of course it wouldn't be a Subaru if it didn't boast all-wheel drive as standard, which has long given Subarus an edge over competitors and have made them beloved in cold weather states and among the adventure-minded. Subaru invited us to South Dakota to be among the first to drive the 2018 Crosstrek. Under an expansive sky, countless miles of dirt roads, and the granite face gaze of 4 famous presidents, we spent a day and hundreds of miles fleshing out this new crossover. Here's what we found on this first drive. In the city. This is where we spent the least amount of our time because, well, we didn't really drive through any bustling metropolises during our time in South Dakota. About the only thing that qualified as traffic occurred on the main drag of Deadwood, with a population of less than 1,300 and what seemed like an equal number of tourists. Still, it didn't take a trip to Manhattan to know the Crosstrek would be a fine city dweller. It's a small car, after all, so it's easy to slot into parking spaces. Good visibility, another Subaru hallmark, adds to its ease in urban dwellings. One of the best traits about this new Crosstrek is one that it doesn't have anymore: aggressive throttle tip-in. This tendency to lurch from a stop appears to have been scrubbed from these new Subarus. On the highway, the Crosstrek is a comfortable vehicle for its size. It's not as agile or as fun to drive as a Volkswagen Golf Alltrack, but this higher-riding all-wheel drive utility vehicle feels plusher. Same story for the steering. Whereas the Alltrack steering wheel is firmer, more nuanced and tells you what's going on beneath the wheels, the Crosstrek is quite soft and takes little effort to steer. Here we must also talk about the subby's acceleration. While the engine has been revamped, power output remains modest at best. The 4-cylinder boxer engine makes 152 horsepower, only a 4 horsepower bump over the outgoing model. Comparing it again to the Alltrack with its turbocharged 4-cylinder that makes 170 horsepower, it shouldn't be a surprise that the Crosstrek doesn't feel quick. Side note 1, here's where the enthusiast in us must ask, wouldn't it be great to have a turbocharged Crosstrek? Side note 2, sorry, but the only alternative powertrain mentioned by execs at the media launch is an alternative power one, such as a hybrid. We'll end this section on a sweeter note. The continuously variable transmission, CVT, that most Crosstreks will be sold with feels ever more natural, and if you get a model with paddle shifters, premium or limited trims, you can even exercise it as you see fit. Also notable is the work that went into quieting the Crosstrek. Less of the boxer engine's inherent gruffness can be heard at startup and under full acceleration. Off-road. Now we come into the Crosstrek's natural territory, roads that are not paved or are otherwise traction compromised. We spent hours barreling down dusty and desolate dirt roads in the all-new Crosstrek, sometimes going at speeds we probably shouldn't have. On these paths the subby's advanced all-wheel drive system truly helped us feel confident, while its commendable 8.7 inches of ground clearance kept the underbody scrape-free. Combined with advanced traction management, the Crosstrek always kept its composure. This was the case even when we flung the Subaru into a corner hard, allowing it to slide across the dirt. The Crosstrek actually let itself drift a moment before its systems kicked in. This allowed some loonish type fun before the electronic safety nets kicked in to keep us from sliding too far. For a steeper challenge, literally, we visited a quarry brimming with quarry-like terrain, namely rocks, loose gravel and mountain made up of both. Here we tested X mode with hill descent control, Subaru's off-road system that comes to the Crosstrek for the first time with this new model. Standard on models with an automatic transmission, the system manages throttle and braking on steep slopes, which lets you focus on steering the vehicle to stay on its intended path. After we engaged X mode with the simple press of a button near the transmission selector, the Crosstrek rolled down the slope with assuredness and ease. Hey, there's a third pedal. Manual transmissions by their nature are usually more engaging to drive, if for nothing else because of the driver involvement needed to use them. This holds true of the new Crosstrek, but we didn't find it all that satisfying. To our foot, the clutch pedal felt on the spongy side, and the gear selector could be notchy. After a couple of hours we become more acclimated to the Crosstrek's manual, but it still didn't feel as crisp overall as we'd wished. If you're thinking of one, see how it feels to your senses first. Infotainment. The 2018 Crosstrek comes with one of 3 touchscreen infotainment systems, from the base Starlink 6.5-inch multimedia system to an 8-inch system, with or without navigation. Whichever one you go with, it has Apple CarPlay and Android Auto compatibility standard. Great news for smartphone compatibility out the gate. The base audio system only has 4 speakers, while premium and limited models get 6 and a CD player. Optional on limited models is a 432-watt Harman Kardon system, which marks the first time a premium audio system has been offered on the Crosstrek. Optional on all trims is a Rockford Fosgate audio system for $499. Front seats. We felt the Crosstrek's front seats were perfectly adequate for the task at hand. They neither overwhelmed with soothing comfort, nor did they leave us aching after a day's drive. All models have 6-way adjustable driver seat and 4-way adjustable passenger seat. Cloth is standard in base and mid trims, while top-line limited models are lined in leather. For the first time on a Crosstrek, power adjustment for the driver's seat can be had on limited models. If we could wish for one thing, it'd be adjustable lumbar support. Rear seats. The rear passenger area of the Crosstrek is surprisingly roomy, with 36.5 inches of legroom and a seating position that grants a good view out the windows. Despite the Crosstrek's sloped roof, there's still decent headroom in back. As is the case with most compact cars, the rear seat can technically fit 3 across, but that'd be a squeeze. All models have rear seats that fold in a 60/40 split. Cargo area. Most crossovers and SUVs say they have flat folding seats, but rarely does flat mean flat. Fold the Crosstrek's rear seats, however, and you'll see what flat should look like. With seats folded, you can cram up to 55.3 cubic feet of gear into the cargo space, while even with the rear seats up you get 20.8 cubic feet. This is why hatchbacks are so practical. Additionally, roof rails are standard, so strap on that bike or kayak. If you need to haul more gear still, the Crosstrek is rated to tow, unlike some subcompact crossover rivals. Granted, at 1,500 pounds you won't be pulling a house, but at least you can pull something. Fuel economy. Subarus are surprisingly fuel efficient, something which is especially laudable given that most are all-wheel drive. The latest Crosstrek continues to put up impressive numbers, with CVT automatic models earning a 29 mpg combined and manual transmission models rated at 25. We should note that in our time with the manual model, the car showed figures markedly higher, in the mid-30 range. As they say, your mileage may vary. Rivals. If you consider the Crosstrek a subcompact SUV, it has a bevy of rivals ranging from the Mazda CX-3 and Nissan Juke to the Chevy Track and Fiat 500X. We think its most direct competitor is the slightly larger Volkswagen Golf Alltrack. As with the Crosstrek, the Alltrack is essentially a lifted, ruggedized, all-wheel drive version of an existing 5-door hatchback, in the VW's case the Golf Sportwagon. As we've noted, the VW is more powerful, feels more dynamic and fun to drive, and it also offers a manual transmission or a 6-speed twin-clutch automatic. But it has less ground clearance, a higher starting price, and if history is indicative, will have lower residual value.